Alright, I think we're live again. This is always a little nerve-wracking when I'm not streaming every day. But a little less so when I see the familiar friends in the chat. Hey there, Dean and Vince. Nice to be streaming again, and nice to see you. But yeah, so I haven't been doing the daily streaming routine lately because I've been devoting most of my time to editing and all the related computer shenanigans, some of which I've gotten into on the last stream. But I wanted to at least do a quick stream today. I don't have time for a long stream, unfortunately, but I can at least quickly do a bit of an editing status, or excuse me, an editing hiccup. And that's what I have to deal with, clearly. Just a bit of a status report and show you some of the work in progress, and then do an unboxing. Someone took me up on my P.O. box offer recently, and I got a package from Eric Cook that we are ready to tear into on this stream. And Tuco is wandering around up here. He was on camera. Well, he was like sleeping on a chair within range of the robot camera, but now he's over here and I don't feel like carrying the robot camera around. So maybe it'll just be me for a sec. I wonder if I can aim the robot over there. I think he's... oh, there he is. That kind of works. So yeah, I got into a little bit of this, but so actually maybe for the highest level. So some of you may not know that I do edited videos also. I've been doing these streams. Well, I started doing the streams originally as a way of sharing some of the behind-the-scenes work because. You know, I would record these videos where I was basically just doing a bunch of work and trying to catch the interesting parts on video and talking about my process a lot. And I decided to try to start live streaming that in addition to recording it. And so that was what kind of led to this thing that we're in right now. Oh, that's a good question from Robert, who asks, did we ever get around to more poking at the gimbal control loop? Not really. We just looked at the... I think you were probably on the last stream where we really did that. There was a little bit of digging into the firmware with IDA. Tuco, what are you doing? Oh, Tuco. Tuco, what's wrong? You okay, boy? He's acting like he's gonna puke. I was trying to make sure that he was not having problems and also not going to puke on anything that he didn't have to puke on. Hey boy, are you okay? He might have just eaten a moth or something. Yeah, so I think the last, just for a quick bit of context on the gimbal, so there's a modified 3-axis gimbal on this Tuco Flyer robot that we've been hacking on. And, Tuco, what are you doing? Honey, stop that. He's gonna start horking again as soon as I'm not paying attention. Yeah, man, where were we? So there's this gimbal. We modified it a bunch with some firmware patches and a different camera than it usually takes. And so there's kind of more of an unstable range in its positioning than I'd like. I want to be able to aim it further down than it can currently get without going into kind of a vibrating frenzy. So on the last stream where we were dealing with that, I was just taking a closer look at well, I was mostly working on the tooling, honestly, and it was like trying to get better data back from all the parameters and being able to like turn on and off graphs and things like that. And we just barely got to the point using that brand new tooling to find out that, well, yes, there's a very obvious oscillation in some of the parameters when we get into that bad error state that we'd like to detect. But I didn't get as far as actually finding what parameters might be worth tuning to alleviate that, or actually writing a watchdog that monitors it, or anything useful like that. So there's still a lot more work to be done there. I had been making more progress on the robot a little bit on the back burner, just trying to document the stuff that's there, because I mean, part of it is I've got this big backlog of footage, and the backlog to some extent is inevitable, but I've got to limit it, like, for no other reason than just I'll run out of hard disk space eventually. But it's also nice to, you know, after 6 months or so, eventually get the video out there. So I've been trying to actually do that. And at least on the bright side, I think I'm converging on a better workflow that I'll be able to use to get the video out faster. Because I think so much of the hassle in editing was just stuff that I shouldn't have been putting up with Final Cut Pro or with the computer I was running it on. So, yeah, so I guess, you know, segueing into that topic as gracelessly as I can manage, some of the additional delay then has been not just having this big footage backlog, but also trying to switch from Final Cut to Adobe Premiere and learning a bunch of new stuff, and it's been great, and I love the new tools, and it's been crashing a lot, unfortunately, but then Final Cut also crashes a lot, so I don't know. I mean, there's definitely some negatives, but I think the overwhelming net result is that I like this thing, and I'm probably going to be able to use it to put out nicer video and eventually do it faster. No guarantees about the video coming out faster, but I am working on that. I mean, what I'd really like to be able to do is do more of the editing incrementally, because I keep ending up with these issues in my workflow where it's just like really difficult to get started with the editing until I have this chunk of footage that I can work with, because then I can work with that larger unit when I'm doing like file managements and backups and stuff. And I think I'm actually at the point where the devices I'm working with are like relatively fast and network attached, and I can run rsync on all of them, and I can actually start trying to get the footage in place gradually. And anyway, I don't need to make this whole stream about my media management system, because I'm sure there are things I could fix about that, but part of what I've been doing the last couple weeks is just getting more used to how a good workflow with Adobe Premiere and After Effects should look, and getting my setup closer to that. Oh yeah, the Sparky badge. Joseph was noticing that. Thank you. Yeah, that was a gift from Kate, I think, when I saw her at B-Sides. Yeah, these are SparkFun makes these, and they're awesome. Tuco's gonna cat. Yeah. Oh, nice memes. That does look nice. Yeah, so I don't know if I've quite gotten around to completely saying it in an actual sentence, but like the goal of this is to make these like edited video blogs, or at least that's like one goal. Like a lot of people like the streams, but it's also true that it takes, you know, it's like one of those things that I think a lot of people like is like to put on while they work, or you can like scrub through it and find the interesting parts, but there's just like a lot of video there, and like I know I'm editing it, there's just a lot of stuff there, and I for one appreciate very condensed videos, so it's nice to be able to put stuff in a rapid format when I can. So oh yeah, Joseph says, don't they give them away, the Sparky badges, if you manage to break stuff in an interesting way? I think so. I think you can like send in your story about an interesting thing that the electrical failure taught you. Yeah, I really like Adafruit. They're just delightful. Yeah, so if you haven't seen it actually, I've got, oh, is Tuco chirping at birds? he's behind the oscilloscope or in the power supply. You can sort of barely see him in this view. Yeah, so eventually this stuff ends up on scanlime.org, this has been my blog for a really long time, and like I've just been putting my projects here like ever since I felt like putting stuff on the internet. But lately it's been mostly an index of these kind of more polished and editing intensive videos that I do. And then just for those videos, there's also a link up here to the playlist on YouTube. And so this is what I've been working on in the editing room, in my desk, like on my desk with Final Cut, or not Final Cut anymore, thankfully, but yes, Adobe Premiere full screen. And so there have been 4 of these so far on the Tuco Flyer project specifically, and so the next one is going to cover. I'm still wrestling just a little bit with the scope, and it's possible I might try to redefine the scope into one video about the mechanical structure of the flyer, and then one video about the computer vision, but I probably won't. I think I'm going to let kind of the combination of laziness and expediency and kind of joining similar topics together, put those into one video if I can manage it, but I don't know. I'm kind of partway in the process of just, like, I thought, I never managed to do this like linearly where I like script the whole thing and then I like edit the whole thing. I kind of did that on the last video, the Winchbot, because I needed to get it just so short. But I usually don't do it that way. Usually it's kind of this mishmash of like editing and scripting and figuring out what to say and figuring out what I've got time for and figuring out what kind of interesting bits of footage I have, and so this video has been a little bit more like that, but also maybe it's just more like that because I've been getting used to the new tools and the new workflow. So it's probably going to be something where I introduce like the Flyer bot itself, and it being this like robot that does these really high level and interesting things, but with the help of this like ground support system, the winches and the computing power on the ground that run its vision system. And that it's just this like pillar of sensors, and I talk about that a little bit and show some footage from building it. But then and then I guess like the second half of it, which is the thing that I might split out into a second video maybe, would be actually the computer vision and how to make this thing see, and like using this advantage of having the leash and the computing power on the ground, putting actually some pretty intense algorithms on there that'll help us track arbitrary rectangles and then also detect objects. And yeah, I get so stressed out about the narrative on this, honestly. Like, it feels a lot like when I try to do anything public speaking, like I give a talk or something. Like, actually putting together the slides is not that hard, but I just agonize endlessly over what I'm even trying to say, and it's a lot like that with the video editing. So yeah, back in that. Oh, while I was in web browser land, I also wanted to mention something briefly. I don't want to turn this into like a rant stream or anything, but a lot of people are pretty rightly upset over what Patreon's been pulling lately. So for anyone who hasn't heard, they recently changed the fee structure in this way, which, like, I don't really have time to get into the details, but it basically shifts the credit card processing fees to the patrons, so the person who's supporting the creator, but they do it in this way that sneaks in this like additional like 37-cent charge that makes it kind of especially hard on both patrons and creators that rely on a lot of small pledges. So it's been really frustrating, and you know, I've been trying to like stay calm and not hyperbolic, because like the last thing, you know, patrons and support and creators of any size on Patreon need is for everyone to like, you know, like jump ship and boycott the platform. But that said, we've been looking for alternatives, and so if you feel like trying out an alternative, if you already support me or if you're interested in supporting my content, you know, monthly or weekly or whatever, I've been trying out this nonprofit service called LiberaPay. And so, as you can see, a few people have already moved over from Patreon to LiberaPay. And one thing about it that is very different from Patreon is that it's anonymous, and so I can't see who you are, I can't give you like rewards. But so far, the way my Patreon is set up, I hadn't been using it for that anyway. I'd just been using it as just basically a donation platform. So as things stand right now, LiberaPay and Patreon for me are pretty equivalent. So like if you feel more comfortable using LiberaPay and you'd like to, you'd like to jump on that bandwagon of people sending a message to Patreon, then like by all means do so. But I don't think it's like a good idea to like bring out pitchforks necessarily, because a lot of people, as much as it does suck, like finding out very clearly that Patreon doesn't respect small creators. Part of what's so frustrating about this is it's not just that fee change and whatever, the like practical things, but like then we like hear more about the reasoning behind what Patreon is actually trying to do, and they just like flat out don't care about small creators on their platform, which just goes against everything they claim to be about, which is very frustrating. So anyway, like I said, I don't want to turn this into a rant, but if you are also frustrated with that, just be aware that there are some alternatives. So that's all I'm going to say about that right now. Anyway, how do I unzoom this? Unfortunately, I've been doing all my editing at 4K, and I just don't know if I can even manage with 1080p, so I might have to unzoom this. Of course, it's small for me too, because I'm watching this on a 1080p monitor, but at least like I kind of remember where things are. Yeah, so for anybody, if you follow me on Twitter, or like you've heard me complain about stuff like this before, you've probably just heard me complain about just like how much footage I have. You might guess just based on how much I record, but I just have terabytes and terabytes of footage to deal with. And my strategy currently is when I film stuff, it all goes to like just arbitrary local disks. So there's an SD card in my camera. Some of the computers that I record on just record to their hard drive. I don't like record directly to anything networked. But then after a particular session, so usually a stream or a recording that I'm doing off stream, I'll run a script that just files that away by project and by date on a network attached storage device, which is this thing. If you can read any of the text, it's this this vidbox drive. And this is about 30 terabytes of like RAID disks. And it doesn't have anything especially permanent on it. It's basically a rotating FIFO of footage. And I dump stuff on there as soon as I finish filming it, and it stays there until I'm done editing it. And I try to group footage roughly according to like chunks of footage that I plan to use for one video, but it doesn't always end up like that. So I kind of basically have these 4 terabyte bundles of footage, and I chose 4 terabytes because that was the size of external hard drive I could get relatively inexpensively. So I just have like literally a toolbox in the closet full of external 4 terabyte hard drives with additional overflow footage from the system, and so I wanted everything to fit on those increments. And so that's why I have like scanlime, TucoCam, 1, 2, 3, 4, but I only actually have 3 and 4 on my disk right now because that's what I'm editing with. Or actually, that's on the NAS. On my disk, I also have 2. But anyway, so I have footage there, and then I have a local 8 terabyte disk that I keep the footage on. If I was just like made of computer hardware and cache, I would probably have an SSD for this, but with the amount of footage I'm dealing with, a 7200 RPM spinning disk seems like about my speed. Because I really do need an 8 terabyte disk for that. At least 4, and 8 is kind of comfortable because I can keep a couple of those bundles. You can see it's mostly full right now. It's 7.2 terabytes full. And then I've got another disk for cache, which is mostly Adobe caches and transcoded files. And sometimes a file is too broken for Premiere to load it, so I'll have to use FFmpeg to transcode it into ProRes, and then those ProRes files are huge. And then those disks are all separate from the system disks. Like my my personal files are always getting like indexed and stuff, so those are always sucking up I/O bandwidth that I don't want to give to Adobe Premiere. And then so I've got bins of media, so I've been using a variety of different approaches. I was kind of going a little more storyline driven at the very beginning of the video, just trying to figure out how the intro would even work. So that you can see there's this section that has some dialogue attached, and I was trying to figure out how the intro was going to work, and even pulled in some music that I made earlier and have used in a couple of these videos. And then once I kind of got an intro that I was... Oh, sorry, that's going to scrub audio. I forgot how to turn off audio scrubbing in Premiere. I know how to mute tracks. Is that all you got? Oh, okay. Preferences. I'll just turn that off in preferences, because that is a little annoying. Usually it just, as you scrub the playhead, it plays the audio associated with each frame, which is actually really useful in editing, but it just makes really annoying noises, so I'm going to turn that off for the video here. I'm seeing the same resolution you are, don't worry. I know it's small. Okay, so this is my whole timeline. I think that says 50 minutes. You can see there are a lot of gaps though. Like, I've just been kind of throwing footage down, and some of this is contiguous and a lot of it isn't. And I've just been... So after that first section where I was going through and actually trying to figure out if the intro was going to work at all, then I've been going through and just going through all the footage I have and trying to figure out what's useful, and laying it down kind of separated roughly chronologically, but also roughly kind of by project. So like if I change topics in the input footage, then I can just seek over down here to a different blob of clips and just start inserting stuff into that blob and kind of start sorting it as I go through it. And so I've been doing that chronologically, and I actually got through all the bundles that I thought I would need for this project. So 2CoCam 2 and 3 are all sorted, and 3 ended on November 19th. So all that footage is sorted. And so what I see when I go through this is like, I have the project bundles, and then I open up a project bundle, and then this is like all stuff that my Python scripts that I run when I store footage, like that's stuff that they generate. And then this is all sorted by date. So this just says like 2017, 09, 11 for September, like 11, 19, 21, 22, etc. And then there's October, there's November. And so if I just click on a date, like let's say October, let's say Halloween. What was I doing on Halloween? And then I've got a bunch of files. The kind of files that I have really vary by day. Like if it was a basic streaming day, then I'll usually just have the live recording that OBS made during the stream. So do I have that? Unfortunately, a lot of those have been broken in this batch of footage, which is frustrating, and I need to get to the bottom of it, but so far, like, it isn't that they're all broken, it's that a lot of them are. And the ones that I've needed, I've been fixing up with FFmpeg, but that's really slow and needs like literally a half a terabyte of temporary hard disk space, so I've only done that like once so far. But actually I don't have that in this, so on Halloween apparently I didn't stream, I just had a bunch of recordings from the robot, so I can double click on one of these, and most of these are pretty boring. It's just like anytime I clicked record, the file eventually ends up here and I get to go through it. So that had a little bit of good cat footage, but nothing especially like interesting. Here's me at the desk. And so this is real-time footage. If I go through here, that's playing real-time. It's not very long. Let's find a different day. This is not very interesting. Let's try... No. Okay, this looks like an actual filming day. So these MVI files are a bunch of digital camera footage. So these are the ones that I pull off of my digital SLR after I film. It would be nice if I could record these directly to hard disk, but this is the system I've got. So this was actually stuff where I had one day where I was doing stuff for the winches and for the flyer. So I had a bunch of this footage that I didn't end up needing at all, or at least not in this edit, because I already used it in a different edit. The digital SLR gives me these little files of like 30 minutes each. So I can just highlight a bunch of these and right-click, new sequence from clip, and that's how I got one of these. So then if I take that new sequence and open it up in the source monitor, now I can actually just scrub through the concatenation of all that footage, which is a little more convenient. So then what I'll do is, I can go through here and find some interesting parts. And I've actually been using this, so in an earlier donation stream, actually, Umar sent in a lot of interesting hardware, including this little editing controller, and I've actually been using this a lot. It's actually super handy now that I've gotten the hang of it. It was also one of those things where I didn't really understand the editing workflow much, because I just kind of was like figuring stuff out as I went with Final Cut, and then working, like actually making the switch to Premiere and like having to look up how this stuff is supposed to work. Like I actually went through and tried to, figure out what the best practice workflow is for some of this stuff, and that's been nice. And I think some of the things that I really didn't do right with Final Cut Pro is I would just take large chunks of footage and do these batch operations, like color grading and audio alignment and stuff like that on these huge chunks of footage, and then I would have to use the blade operation to cut those up where all my edit points wanted to go. And then Final Cut, just performance-wise, was really bad at those blade operations. Every time I would click the footage to cut it, it would just like beach ball for a fraction of a second and then regenerate the thumbnails for everything after the cut. And so it just super slowed down the editing operation. Whereas if I wanted to do something similar here, I could do it in a separate, to be clear, I think you could do the same things in Final Cut. It's just that like the workflow I'm getting used to now is like, I think a lot more scalable, where either, I can compose the clips I want in a separate sequence, load them into the source monitor and like scrub through them here. And then like if I find a piece I want, I can just like mark it, the in and out points here. And I'm using the controller here, but this is the same as like I and O on the keyboard. So I could use I and O like that. And in fact, you can even pretty easily go down to the individual frame level and find exactly what frames you want, and then drop it into the timeline. This is probably just like, people are like, you're only finding out about this now, but I just don't really know how to edit video efficiently, and I'm figuring that out as I go. But yeah, it's been getting a lot faster just on this last project. So I think the combination of hardware and operating system and tool and process improvements, I should be able to put out videos a good bit faster. But it's still a lot of work. There's still just a lot of work to do in this process. I can show you some of the stuff that I've got so far. Some of it is just like still too long to really go through, but this first section with audio is at least kind of nice. And I mean, let me know what you think about this. Like, if you think, I'd appreciate comments both on like whether, like, what kind of work you like to see, as well as just like whether particular sequences work or not, that kind of thing. But let me know what you think. Let's try that. Let me see if I can render this.
This is the latest update in the Tuco Flyer project, a DIY indoor wire cam I'm building to make it easier for all of you to hang out with my furry co-star Tuco. This time we'll build a movable camera platform with sensors and computer vision so it can detect and track cat-like objects. I want this bot to work well on its own or with a crowd of people controlling it remotely. So one goal at this stage of the design is to have a good mixture of automatic and manual control options. I tracking algorithm stabilizes the camera around any rectangle of pixels, and meanwhile an object detector labels the scene with rectangles we might find interesting.
You can see that's where the dialogue ends, but I've got a little bit more video that I was probably going to put nearby. Yeah. There's maybe slightly more animation than necessary in this part of the video.
This is the
nice.
latest update in the Tuco
Missing
Flyer.
Farmer says, I'm looking forward to the fun with fluorescein part. Yeah, I think I did all that before I had my streaming setup really going, but I still got the materials pretty handy, so like we could do more of that. That's a disco ball motor with some glass on top. I made a little 3D printed mount for the glass and used compressed air to kind of keep the bead of fluorescein suspended on the glass. It was a fun project. Let's see. So that's kind of the intro. My goal with the intro was basically to make something that builds up momentum with the project and kind of starts off relatively slow but interesting, and then starts speeding up a little bit and showing you some of the key points, like oh, this is a moving camera that can actually move pretty fast or can stay stable, and it has this visual tracking system, and it involves cats and 3D printed parts, and oh yeah, this is the scanlime channel. And then this is just a really nice little clip that I liked about Tuco. But you can see this is all actually from pretty late in the project. Like this is after the most recent sprite tracking system was going and the camera is actually working pretty well. So this is kind of still showing the final result rather than the technique. I liked that clip a lot. And then I thought that was for the tracking, but yeah, I mean, at the beginning, I'm just kind of trying to give a quick idea of what the video is about, just because, you know, like I like the first like 5 seconds or the first 30 seconds of the video to stand on its own if possible, but because you know that's how the internet works. But and then I thought, you know, it'd be nice to link this up with the rest of the series and talk about where we've been and like where we've been, where we're going, etc. And of course, plenty of cat pictures. But yeah, then the rest of it was, I think, so far pretty chronological around the build process. And I still hadn't decided how much time to allocate to each of these pieces, so far the timing on these clips are just pretty much completely arbitrary. And I haven't decided whether I'm going to use the DaveCAD footage or animate some of this, but I've got some DaveCAD explanations here. Yeah, and so then, because I wanted this to be about the flyer bot too, I'm like starting with like the carbon fiber rod, and I'll probably talk about why it wants to be tall. And then there's some sensors. It's maybe going to be a little awkward because we don't really get very far into using the sensors, but we're at least building the bot that includes them. So it's like mounting. Oh, I like this section about the LED ring. Can I play this section? This also doesn't have sound, but I might have uploaded part of this to Twitter. But yeah, and like, this is one of those things where like, this video is not about the flyer LEDs. I won't even really get that far in the flyer LED system, but it is something that is like a step along the way in explaining what this robot is capable of, and it looks cool, and it makes for some good photography. I don't know, I'm so easily sucked in by the allure of things that they make pleasing video. So some of this was just irresistible, like that dribble of hot glue, like just let's appreciate some of those frames. I've been dreaming of frames lately. Oh yeah. It's just delightful. Anyway. And then it goes into the top, which this part may or may not stay attached, but I had them together because they were both LED related footage. Yeah, the black clock glue is fun. I think I first heard about that from Ben Krasnow. My computer's lagging a little bit on playing this stuff back in the preview window. Yeah, oops. And this is like yet another detour. It's like, do I really need to show footage of splicing the LED strips together? But it's nice to show mistakes sometimes, and it was just so visually interesting that I thought it was worth keeping. I have so much fun with like color grading and stuff sometimes too. I need to make sure to take a good color pass on those LEDs. Oh, nice. Vince likes my Fade Candy intro video. That one was fun. Yeah, I think I edited that before doing most of my other videos, but I had a lot of fun making that. That one was a lot of work to do too. That one, maybe I should play that really quick because I'm actually forgetting entirely what's in there. Hey Tuco. Should also keep an eye on the clock because I do have a limited amount of time here and an unboxing to do. Oh, Tuke, don't spill my coffee. Oh yeah, it's on YouTube and Vimeo. Yeah. So, what did I do this in? I think I did this in Final Cut Pro. This might have been one of the first handful of things I did in Final Cut Pro. I don't remember. But this section here is all stop motion, because it was the only way I had handy to get rid of the flicker entirely. I wanted all the photography to be flicker free, and so I actually did each frame as a long exposure photograph and then did a frame advance in the script. Not on this section, obviously you can see the flicker here, but that first section was all stop motion. And then this is real time. This was like a phone video. I stabilized this as much as I could. Oh, and this is not my music either. This was something I found on some royalty-free SoundCloud. I actually ended up really liking the artist. I think it was Creative Commons, and I think their stuff was really good. Oh yeah, ISE. That's right. Oh, broken link. Well, it was Creative Commons on SoundCloud when I found it. I hope it's still around, but I like the track. I get so hung up on music stuff too, because like I'm always like, I want to make my own track for this video, and then of course I spend all my time making that one track. But yep. So what else do I have? Putting together LEDs. We already watched that part. Yeah, so more about this, more about the wiring. This is the power supply section. So this will probably look familiar to people who watch like every single stream, but these exact perspectives don't actually show up on stream because these are the files I get off the SD card from the camera. So the video is actually a lot nicer than the stuff that comes out the HDMI port, unfortunately. Oh yeah, I did a little bit. Yeah. So some of the titles here I did in After Effects so that I could do motion tracking, but then like, you know, this one's just in Premiere. gotta weigh it, right? Yeah, so like this is like pretty chronological, and then like I'm getting it close to done here. How much of the pain of threading that cord did I actually keep? I just have like bits and pieces of that. And then this is one of my favorite little 3D printing hacks in this piece. I just have a hexagon cutout on one side that traps the nut on this SMA connector, and then I use a coupler to join this SMA to an SMA to BNC adapter. That was pretty fun. Oh yeah, had some great little... I don't know where this footage is going either. I just found this while I was editing and I had to keep it and turn it into a little montage that I'm going to do something with. I mean, in this context of this video, I'm probably going to have a bunch of little like cat B-roll interludes in this video because I just have so much good cat footage in these archives. Yeah, Luna is so sweet. Hope she's enjoying her new home. High-speed cat petting. Anyway, yeah. So there's just so much of this. It just goes on. This is it's just so much editing. So some of this is going to be more like showing off like kind of how the system works and having some backdrop for me talking about how the tracking works. I don't know how much of the software footage I'm going to include, because without going like really deep into the software architecture, I can't really put a lot of meaningful software context in here. So I think it's going to be a lot of like graphs and like whatever is visually appealing, but then like time lapses of me editing Rust code and then like links to GitHub, stuff like that. I think this particular format, I can't really go deep into the code. Stuff like that. Anyway, I think I should leave the video editor alone for a bit and do this teardown so that I can end the stream because I've got to go pretty soon. But this is kind of what I got so far. Let me know what you think. Send help. It's a deep pit of editing I've been in. But yeah, no, it's been fine. Oh, Scott is asking what the 3D animation was made in. That's a good question. Yeah, that was a lot of work actually. I don't know if I'd do that again. I did that to try out the light version of Cinema 4D included with the Adobe subscription that I got for all this. So, but it's actually more complicated than that. So the look that you're seeing is almost entirely After Effects. And then the 3D model was all Rhino. And so I'm basically just using Cinema 4D to render the 3D model into some silhouettes. And then I'm post-processing, I'm post-processing the silhouettes in After Effects. So this is all pre-rendered, I think. Yeah, I pre-rendered that, but I can show you what that was like internally. Oh, I don't know if I have those files handy right now. Because I did this part on my Mac, I think, before moving stuff over. And I could go dig it up, it's just that it would take a little bit more time than I have right now. But the original files were modeled in a combination of Fusion 360 and Rhino, and then I got them ready for this animation in Rhino by creating two separate 3D models, one with the solid surfaces and one with outlines made of little pipes. And those little pipes I just rendered in a solid color to give me like a hidden line removed version of that with kind of thick and substantial borders. And then I post-processed those two layers separately in After Effects and gave them the kind of glow and the wiggle and a bunch of other stuff that's going on. It was really complicated and took a long time to render. And I wanted to get motion blur, and some of the motion blur is done in After Effects, and then I've also got some of the clips I've got in Premiere are also time warped so that I could focus on particular parts of the animation without having to re-render the animation. But yeah, that actually got really complicated. I've got some simpler After Effects interactions here. That one I pre-rendered because I just didn't want that in this project. I wanted it separate and like baked into a file, but then there's some of the stuff that's done dynamically, like is that title dynamic? That's pre-rendered also. That one was slow. Yeah, this is all After Effects. I mean, the fluorescein is real, but all the effects are done in After Effects. And then this is done live in After Effects. So if I right-click this and how does this work? Edit original. Then it will beach ball for hundreds of years. Actually, I might have tried to open something up on the other monitor. Oh no, there's After Effects. It's just taking its time. Yeah, and so this was, I started out with motion tracking and then cleaned it up manually a little bit and then stuck text on that layer. But it's just like rendering all these frames as Adobe Premiere needs them without having to render a separate file, which is kind of convenient. All right, well, I should get on with things. Sorry, I'm on a time budget today. I think I missed some questions. Or maybe not. Blender's also nice. I've done a bunch of things with Blender. Not a lot recently, but it's a delightful program, if a little inscrutable. All right. So, today's unboxing. So, some of you may have noticed, if you're here at the beginning of streams or if you watch them in the archive, that I've got a little challenge here. If you've got some hardware, you can send it and we can reverse it. And I try to take that pretty seriously. So we've actually been looking at some of those devices recently on the stream. It took me a while, but I got around to taking apart this muscle stimulation device that's designed for treating, I don't actually know the full list of conditions that it's designed to treat, but I think at the very least it's useful for like fibromyalgia and some kinds of like nerve pain. And so we got one of these in a state where it's got like some firmware lockout, and we were tearing into that. We've also got this huge bounty of hardware from Umar related to teleconferencing and like video conferencing. And he's also the one who sent in this controller, and so that's been a bounty of delights of things to reverse engineer. So, so yeah, this came in at the same PO box, and so I think it's time for us to dig in. I don't check this every day, so I don't know exactly when this came in, but I think it was sometime last week. Let's get this servo AF here. Oh yeah, Robert was asking what was happening to the AT keyboard. So I actually have not heard an update on, so just like let you know about the context, he's talking about the IntelliKeys assistive technology keyboard, not like IBM AT. And so we actually took a look at it from a couple of points of view. First, just to look at the hardware, and then second, just to see how compatible the software was with Windows 10. And we actually couldn't reproduce any problems so far. And so I was going to go back and see if we could get a better idea of what the problems were. And so that's still a work in progress. I haven't heard back about what the problems are yet. So that's still the state of that. So yeah, this comes from Eric Cook, and it's delivered to this lovely P.O. box in Emeryville, which I get to walk to and collect packages from sometimes. And so, yeah, thanks so much. Let's see what's going on in here. Whoa. Nice. Well, I don't know if Eric wants their email address public, so I'm just going to try to blur that out. But yeah. So Eric says, "Hi, I like watching your stuff. Much of it goes right over my head, but I can understand enough of it to be impressed. Pretty sure this works. Thought you might find a use for it or some of the components. Keep on hacking." Well, thank you. Oh, it's another camera. It's the Axis M30. Wow, the Axis cameras. I've looked at these online so far, and they're usually like a bit out of my price range. So I've not actually seen these up close. Well, that's pretty cool. Thank you so much, Eric. Let's dig in. Axis M3007 PV. Robert asks if it has a botnet on it yet. Yeah, who knows? Let's see how easy it is to root. They're helpful enough to give me a template so I can mount it on the wall. Which, if it isn't horribly insecure, maybe I would want to do, perhaps. Since, you know, it is useful to have cameras here. Like, I've got an overhead camera that takes a sec for the video streaming to start, but it is eventually kind of useful. Hello! You might notice that, where is it? There's an object over there that's like covered in like white and gray blobs. That is actually a really awesome couch, which you might have seen in some pictures of Tuco recently. But my friend whose couch that is, it's just here temporarily. It's not my couch. They're just storing it here temporarily. Because if it was here permanently, Tuco would destroy it. He was being uncharacteristically nice to it when I took those pictures. Well, let's see what it says on the outside before we dig into this quite yet, because I'm curious what this is actually advertised as. So it's a discreet and affordable surveillance system. Is this power over Ethernet? Looks like it. That could be nice. And it is connected to the www, the one and only. Got a software version and a UL rating and all that. Neat. Yeah, this feels expensive. Feels like it's made of a lot of metal. That's nice. And it's got a molded in pigtail lead here, presumably for weatherproofing. And that goes right to a shielded RJ45. That looks very nice. And then we've got some Torx screws holding that cast, feels like cast aluminum. These look like replacement. Oh yeah, it's a cord entry in case you want the cord to come out sideways instead of going through the wall. And they include a wrench and a software CD, or I think that's what this coaster is. Wow, that's pretty cool. I wonder if we can easily do an internal teardown. I wonder if we can just open these front screws. Oh, these are already loose. Wow, it's like a little space station. There's a place for what might be a reset button right there. And an SD card slot or a SIM slot, probably an SD slot. And this might be focus. That's gotta be focus. It's even graduated here. Oh, that's very nice. So this would be, and then there's a weatherproofing gasket here. This would be like the amount to which you'd have to open it for servicing, like swapping out the SD card or resetting its network settings or adjusting the focus. But then there's another layer we can go down. Missing firmware says the dome is where the botnet lives. Yeah. Jean Mercier in YouTube chat says meow. I agree. That is usually the right answer. Maybe I'll take those completely out. Oh, is there one more over there? This section's loose-ish. Oh, and this section is slightly differently loose. Great. So that covers up the little cable entry gland. This is like a silicone gland that makes a seal around the wire. And that whole thing also covers up this additional screw hole. Great. So the camera is actually attached to the lens assembly by a little wire. It's not a flat flex, it's actually a ribbon made up of, looks like 32 gauge Kynar wire or something along those lines, or Teflon wire. That is very delicate and expensive looking. I had one of those moments where I put my head in just the right spot and the ambient noise in the room got way louder, and I was trying to decide, is that a power supply with coil wine or is that the heater's pilot light? I think it's the heater's pilot light. I'm also trying to figure out how to open this flex without destroying it. I don't see how this particular one unlatches. It's also possible it doesn't unlatch. I mean, we can look at it in the microscope. I don't see a lever on there, and it looks like it snaps into place. Zuko's on the couch there, and the robot's sort of keeping up with him. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head how to get that out non-destructively, and I might just try leaving it in. So SD card, more screws, which we'll take out in a sec. Got some RAM, This is going to be some kind of system on chip, I assume. Maybe even an FPGA. Some DC converter stuff. That's the coil for the DC, or for the power over Ethernet, and then the coil for the data. And then the Ethernet is actually just punched down directly onto the board. I've never seen that before. These are like telecom punch downs. Missing firmware suggests that might be a plug that you pull up. Not the whole thing, right? Because I can try poking at that with the tweezers to see if any of it's mobile, but I'm not going to pull on the wires, and I don't see anything to poke at along the edges. So I think I'm just going to try to undo the board without taking these wires off, because I'm like, the Ethernet's also stuck down. Oh, I don't know. This is... I could easily disrupt the crimps by taking that out. Alright, let's see if I can get this out without destroying it. Okay. I'm getting low on time, but I'm going to at least try to flip this board open, or around, and let's see what's on the other side before I have to call this a day. Also thinking about debug interfaces, we've got a couple of good ones on this side, or at least potential. There's a 4-wire port, which is quite likely serial, and then 6-wire, which might be JTAG. Not quite loose. This feels very solidly well made. Possible system on chip is just stuck down to this whole thing as a heatsink. Oh, there's one here that's even labeled debug, this unpopulated 6-pin. Okay, I can spend a couple minutes here with a spudger, but this is not looking good in terms of our ability to get in here on this stream. Oh, maybe I was just being too gentle. I think that worked. Oh yeah, there's a thermal pad. Ooh, is that a branded chip? That's a hell of a place to put the battery. Okay, so we have more RAM, and that is a custom chip. The label is just Access Communications ARTREC 4, ARTREC-4. We've got an opto-isolated section for the power supply. This is a Broadcom chip over here. What's that? It's near the camera. Anyway, that's pretty cool. I'm going to have to save the rest of this for a different stream, but that is pretty great. Let's at least put these screws in a bin so I won't lose them. Thanks so much for the camera, Eric. I hope we can dig into this and do something interesting. And in any case, I appreciate the hardware and the kind words. It's already proving to be by far the best made security camera I've taken apart. The Tandberg stuff doesn't count as security camera, but that stuff's also pretty well made. Alright, well, I think I'm going to have to end this stream before my coffee is even quite fully, completely done. But thanks for stopping by. And yeah, sorry the editing takes so long, but I'm still working on it. Let me know what you think. And I'll keep everyone updated and keep trying to stream as often as I can. So, and Tuco is still on the couch. He's a little bit blurry. And the editing is still happening. It's just hard to resist when there's more footage to scrub through. You could always be scrubbing through footage. I'm trying to parse missing firmware's question. What is this blue thing on the C90? You mean... Not quite sure what you mean. Sorry. Can't remember anything blue on the C90. The wallpaper was pretty blue when you started it up. The badge. There's a thing. You mean in... Where, well, like, where would you have seen it? Like, in the footage I'm reviewing, or, like, right now, is, I guess, my first question. Because, like, right now, it's, like, right over there, and... I don't know what it has to do with the C9E, but if you're asking about the blue 3D printed stuff over there, those are the Winchbot parts, but... Alright, I'm a little bit confused. Oh, nice! Got some kind words from Testes on the YouTube channel. Super excited for new videos. Saw a post on Reddit on our functional print linking to your Tuco flyer, and I've been going back and rewatching the streams. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Alright, well, I think I gotta wrap this up. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to everyone who hangs out, and special thanks to everyone who sends in stuff for us to take apart, or contributes via Patreon or LibrePay, so that I can keep doing this and keep bringing you videos as often as I can get the frames into the right spot. So... Joseph says, next up a 4-hour stream attempting to locate a blue thing. Yeah, right. That's gonna be the thing to do. Alright, happy hacking, folks. I'll see you on the next stream.